Okay, how many here are consecrated to the Blessed Mother after having attended the retreat, 33 Days to Morning Glory? Show of hands.
Woo!
Awesome.
Wow.
How many here have had the opportunity to ever visit an apparition site anywhere around the world? Okay, so hopefully some information I give you today is new information for you. If it's not, just write it out and bear with me, okay? First of all, first slide. Marian apparitions have been around for about 2,000 years, ever since the birth of Christ. There are apparitions of Mary in front of armies halting their advancement. There are apparitions of Mary guiding people to find lost icons, statues, or paintings, and requesting the building of a chapel at that site. There are apparitions of Mary with warnings, messages, prayers, answers to prayer, requests, and sometimes there's no communication at all, as in Our Lady of Knox. Many saints saw and conversed with Mary, but you're not going to read about that unless you read about the saints themselves, and it will tell you of that visitation. The very first apparition occurred in about 40 A.D. with St. James the Greater in Spain. This event was described in the book The Mystical City of God by Blessed Mary of Agreda, and she said what it actually was a bilocation. And when that would happen, the angels would come and carry Mary to the destination she wished to go. Meanwhile, an angel would stay behind, taking on the image and identity of Mary. That's why it's called bilocation. She was in two places at one time. Mary comes to us from heaven, not randomly or without reason. She doesn't just sit there in heaven and say, oh, I think I'll go visit Earth today. Crossville, Tennessee looks like a good spot. It doesn't quite work that way. Instead, she comes when her children are in most danger, when the assaults of the evil one have reached a critical point. This critical level occurred many times in history, but one time we're going to speak about is in 1531 in Mexico, when human sacrifice by the Aztec Empire was gripping the land. And it was an answer to prayer to Bishop Zumigaro. We know it as Our Lady of Guadalupe. Let's briefly go over the story. It was in the 16th century. It began on December 9th, and it continued through December 12th of 1531. Bishop Zumigaro was sent to Mexico from Spain to convert the Aztecs to Christianity. And he was failing miserably. And so he got on his knees and he prayed to the Blessed Mother for help. And he didn't know if he should even stay in Mexico to continue his work. And he asked for a sign. You have to understand, at that time, the Aztecs had their pagan gods that they worshipped. They had their rituals, and part of their rituals was human and child sacrifice. 1 out of every 5 children was sacrificed. It was bloody, it was gory, it was awful, and I'm not going to go into the details. I want you to think about something. Today, around the world, many people have their own pagan gods. Money, power, material items, career, behaviors. And people around the world do their own child sacrifice through the act of abortion. 1 out of every 4 children is aborted around the world. Now, one of the people in this apparition is Juan Diego. And Juan Diego was a widower. He was a former Aztec turned Catholic about 6 years prior. One day, Juan Diego was on his way to Mass, and as he was walking by Tepeyac Hill, he heard beautiful music in the form of birdsong. This is December. That seemed a little unusual and out of place. So he climbed up Tepeyac Hill, and there he was met by the Blessed Mother. And she asked him to have a chapel built there on Tepeyac Hill. So Juan Diego went to the bishop, asked the bishop, can we build a chapel here on Tepeyac Hill? I met with the Blessed Mother, and this is her request. And he was met with a resounding no. So he went back and he told Mary of the bishop's answer, and she sent him again. And he's like, wait a minute, hold it. I'm just a poor peasant here. I don't hold any status. You need to send somebody else. Nope, I want you to go. So he went back, presented the request again, and again he got no. But the bishop opened the door just a wee bit and said, if you're really telling me the truth, I want to see a sign. So Juan Diego went back again to Tepeyac Hill, saw our Blessed Mother again, told her of the answer, and she instructed him, come back tomorrow. Tomorrow came and went, and Juan did not show up. Instead, he was very busy taking care of a sick uncle who was fatally sick and didn't appear as though he was going to survive. The day after that, on December 12th, Juan Diego was in search of a priest because his uncle was knocking on death's door. Mary will not be deterred. She found him. She appeared to him again. And she told him, I want you to go up Tepeyac Hill and I want you to pick the flowers there. Sounded like a strange request, but he did as he was told. He went up, he picked the flowers, he put them all in his tilma, he came back. Mary was waiting for him. And he showed her the flowers in the tilma, and like our Blessed Mother does, she arranged them to be perfectly arranged in the tilma. The same thing she does with our prayers. She arranges them perfectly so that they can be taken to her son Jesus. She intercedes for us. So Juan Diego took his tilma full of flowers back to the bishop, almost didn't get in, but he managed. And when he saw the bishop and his interpreter listened to what Juan Diego had to say. Juan Diego opened his tilma, and all the roses fell out, and the bishop and his interpreter fell to their knees immediately. They weren't looking at the roses. They were staring at Juan Diego, and he was looking back like, why are you staring at me? I brought you the sign. And when he looked down, he saw the image of our Blessed Mother, the same person he had been speaking to. That image was on his tilma. The chapel was built, and now there's a church there, and we know it as Our Lady of Guadalupe. Now let's go over some things you may not know. There were actually 5 visions that day instead of 4. 4 of those visions were with Juan Diego. The 5th vision was with his uncle, Juan Bernardino. When Mary visited Juan, she told him, I will heal you. And he was healed over his illness, never to be sick with that illness again. Juan Diego lived another 17 years, dying in 1548. He was beatified on May 6, 1990, and he was canonized on July 31st, 2002, 471 years later. You may have heard that the Catholic Church moves at slow speeds, glacial speeds, and I would submit this might be one of the examples. The Castilian roses that Juan Diego took to the bishop are native to North Africa, Asia, and Europe, including Spain. They don't grow in Mexico, and they don't grow in December. Let's talk about the tilma for a minute. It's made of cactus cloth. It has shown no signs of rotting or deterioration, and it is almost 500 years old. The average lifespan of cactus cloth is between 20 and 30 years, at which point it will start falling apart and rotting. The painting on the tilma shows no brush strokes on the portrait. The application of paint or medium that was used is so permanent there's never been any restoration needed. The medium that was used for the picture of Mary is unknown to man. In 1979, the University of Florida came and did their inspection of the tilma with some tests. And this is a public university, and they declared the painting miraculous. Let's talk about the image on the tilma. We have a lot to cover here, and what I'm going to cover is according to Aztec culture and their beliefs. Mary appeared as she would have looked as an Aztec maiden. She's standing in front of the sun, indicating that she's greater than the Aztec sun god. She's standing on the moon, and as you can see, it's just a sliver of moon. And it is how the moon appeared that morning before dawn on December 12th. And Mary standing on that sliver of moon indicates that she is greater than the Aztec moon god. She's held aloft by a child with wings, which indicates that she's a queen. And we know her to be the Queen Mother. Her hands are folded in prayer, signifying that there is one greater than she. Her eyes are cast down in humility, indicating compassion. There's white fur around the wrists of her sleeves and at her collar, and this is a mark of royalty, according to Aztec culture. There are 46 stars and a border of gold on her mantle. In Aztec culture, it is a mark of royalty, and it signifies she's from heaven. The 46 stars are formed in the exact constellation as it appeared that morning before dawn, and that's on December 12th. Her robe is rose-colored and covered with flowers. This is a symbolism for an Aztec princess. The bluish green of her mantle is a color reserved as a sign of divinity. The black sash or belt at her waist signifies pregnancy or maternity. And yet, her long, straight hair, because it's straight, in Aztec culture signifies virginity. So here's Mary, pregnant and a virgin, completely in line with Catholic doctrine. The womb area of her dress, you can't see it here, but there are close-up pictures of it. There's a 4-petaled flower. This is an Aztec symbol of life and divinity. And since Mary is pregnant with Jesus, she is carrying life and divinity in her womb. And this is brought out in the Aztec culture. The black cross, you can't see it well in this picture, but the black cross on the brooch at her neck signifies that she is a follower of the God of the missionaries, Jesus Christ. Interestingly, her skin tone changes color. The farther away you stand from the tilma, the darker her skin tone looks and the more she appears as an Aztec princess. But the closer you get to the tilma, the lighter her skin tone appears, and she looks more like a Jewish girl. Reflected in Mary's eyes are tiny, tiny little figures. There are 3 and as many as 13, but the 3 are Juan Diego, Bishop Zumigaro, and his interpreter. Let's talk about the name Guadalupe for a moment. In 1531, there was no such place as Guadalupe, Mexico. But there was in Spain, and it originated in 1326 in Spain. In 1326, there was a cowherder by the name of Gil Cordero who was out looking for a lost cow one day, and he met up with our Blessed Mother. And she told him, I want you to go and dig in this area, and I want you to find a lost treasure. And when you find it, I would like a chapel built there in commemoration. This is another apparition of Mary, and you don't find it in too many books. And it's not one of the approved ones, but it did happen. Gil gathered up a few of his friends and they went digging, and they found an underground cave. And in that cave, they found a statue of Mary that had been lost for 600 years. So let's go back further 600 years to the year of 580. This statue was a gift to Bishop Leander of Seville, and it was given to him by St. Gregory the Great. Over time, those people died, but where the church was, that statue was there in the church. And in the year 711, the statue had to be hidden because of the invasion of the Moors. And the priests were the one that hid it. Well, not everybody knew where it was hidden. People died, people forgot, and it became lost for 600 years. When the statue was found, it was in perfect condition. This is the statue here. It is reported that St. Luke carved the statue. It is carved of wood. And if you look at alleged paintings that St. Luke had done of our Blessed Mother, you will see that this face and the face in the paintings very closely resemble each other. You can look this up online. The chapel was built, it later became a church, and the statue is still to this day contained within. People like to bedazzle the statue, and they have different gowns for different feast days to go on that statue. And you can see right here just the little face of Jesus peering out. And Mary is holding a scepter. She's regarded as a symbol of Our Lady's maternity. Christopher Columbus had a replica made of this statue, and he carried it with him on all his voyages. Before any of his travels, he would go to the shrine and he would kneel in prayer to our Blessed Mother, and the statue is there at the shrine. On November 4th, 1493, Christopher Columbus discovered the West Indies Isle of Caracara, and he renamed it Guadalupe in honor of Mary, because when the church was built, they named it Guadalupe for a nearby village. Bishop Zumiguera was from Spain. He was very familiar with the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe. When he heard the Aztecs name the tilma, he misheard it, and he thought he heard the name Guadalupe. And from there, the tilma has shared the name Guadalupe. What he actually heard was this Aztec word Cuatlasupe, which means she who crushes the serpent. Another spelling, when interpreted, means she who saves us from the devourer. So in either case, Mary saves us from the evil one, from Satan. Many shrines have been built to Our Lady of Guadalupe in London, Italy, Poland, Nagasaki, the United States, and dozens of other countries. This Marian apparition, this miracle, this event, has the largest number of conversions in history. Between the years 1531 and 1538, it is reported that 8 million natives were converted to Catholicism. Another statistic says that over the course of 20 years, 9 million were converted. This both might be right, but in either case, the number of conversions stemming from this miracle are the result of Mary's goal, putting a stop to human sacrifice. Now, there are still ongoing signs in our day and age with Our Lady of Guadalupe. On April 24, 2007, in Mexico City, the legislature voted and passed abortion on demand. After the vote, a mass was held at the Basilica of Our Lady for Guadalupe for the protection of unborn children. After the liturgy, a strange glow with bright light in the center of the image of Mary's belly began to show. And many, many photos were taken. This is the photo, actual photo. It has been studied. and it's been deemed authentic. That light has not been caused by any outside light sources, and it came from within the image of Mary. The light appears to be a human embryo with a halo around it, the unborn Jesus. There are many photos that were taken of that. We know several Marian apparitions, and the three most popular are Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Lourdes, and Our Lady of Fatima. So let's move on to Our Lady of Fatima, and let's go over the general story. We know that there were 3 children involved with the names of Jacinta, Francisco, and Lucia. 1 year before they saw Mary, they were visited by an angel 3 times. And that angel told them that they would receive a visit from our Blessed Mother. In the last visit, the children were given Holy Communion. Lucia received the host, while Francisco and Jacinta received the blood. On May 13th of 1917, the children received their first visit from Mary. When she arrived, it first appeared like a cloud above the trees. And then Mary appeared standing atop the tree. In all her visits, she gave the children messages and secrets. One of her messages is she asked for the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart. Another request was that the first Saturday of 5 consecutive Saturdays be in communion of reparation. We call it the 5 First Saturdays. The secret that she gave them was in 3 parts. First, she showed them a vision of hell, which was very terrifying to the children. And then she told them that there was a greater war yet to come, and that there would be a sign in the night sky before that war would start. And then the third part of the secret was written down and sealed and put away. We know that the people requested a sign, and we know that on October 13th, that sign was given, known as the miracle of the sun. It was a very, very rainy day. It was muddy. People were soaked. And when the miracle of the sun began, the ground was bone dry. The rain had stopped. The people, all their clothing and everything was dry like it had never rained. And then they saw the sun move and spin around in the sky, and it appeared as though it was going to crash into the earth. But then it went back to its normal position. So what are some lesser known facts about Our Lady of Fatima? Jacinta could see and hear Mary, but she could not speak with her. Francisco could see Mary, but not hear her. And Lucia could hear and see Mary and communicate with her. Now, at that time in 1917, the church in Portugal was being persecuted by the Marxists and the Freemason Antichrist. Now, the people accompanied the children on the 2nd and 3rd visits of Mary. They couldn't see Mary, but they could see the cloud atop the tree. And they could see that the branches at the top of the tree were bent in such a way like somebody would have been standing on it. The children were not believed by the priests of the church, and they certainly were not believed by the government officials. They were interrogated at great length. They were starved. They were threatened with their life. They were told they would be boiled in oil if they did not recant their story. They were imprisoned for a brief period of time. When August 13th came around, the children were detained and were not allowed to go to the apparition site. Heaven still set a sign. The people heard a violent clap of thunder, and they saw the cloud above the tree, and they saw that cloud rise to the heavens. And then everyone's face shone bright with lots of colors like a rainbow. And the tree's leaves appeared to morph into flowers. When the children went to the apparition site on September 13th, Mary appeared, and she let the children know heaven was angry over their harsh treatment. Therefore, the miracle that was promised would still happen, but it would be diminished in its greatness. On October 13th, 70,000 people were there with the children, and they experienced the miracle of the sun. The children, however, did not see the miracle of the sun. They were with our Blessed Mother as she appeared. And when she appeared to the children, she first appeared to them as Our Lady of the Rosary. And then the children saw her with St. Joseph and the baby Jesus. Then they saw her as Our Lady of Sorrows. And finally, she became Our Lady of Mount Carmel. This is believed to be representative of the three sets of mysteries of the Rosary. Mary appeared as Our Lady of the Rosary, and then when she was with Joseph and the baby Jesus, that was representative of the joyous mysteries. As Our Lady of Sorrows, that was represented as the sorrowful mysteries. And as Our Lady of Mount Carmel, that represented the glorious mysteries. Now, the people saw the miracle of the sun, and some of them said upon reflection, they saw heaven pointing to the woman clothed with the sun, as written in the book of Revelation. A woman in conflict with the dragon seeking to devour her children. Now let's take a look at some lesser known facts. The warning or the omen that Mary gave about the greater war yet to come occurred January 25th and 26th in 1938. It was an extraordinary borealis that had never seen the likes before, and it lit up the skies of Europe and America. 2 months later, Germany marched on Austria and annexed it, and that was the beginning of World War II. Francisco died April 4th, 1919. Jacinta died February 20th, 1920, and they both died from the Spanish flu. If you know your history, you know that that was a pandemic back then, and in America alone, with 100 million people, there were 675,000 people that died. 100 years later, we experienced our own pandemic. And if you look at the history books, people back then had somewhat the same attitude as the people did nowadays. And there were masks, and there were people who protested against the masks. Both children were beatified in 2000, and they were canonized on May 13th, 2017. Lucia had additional visits from Mary. After all of the visitations, Lucia went through quite a bit of turmoil, some depression, and was struggling. And the bishop suggested that she go to Porto. She was very reluctant to go and did not want to go. On June 15, 1921, Lucia received a visit from Mary, and she assured her that it was God's will that she go to Porto. And so Lucia obeyed. On December 10, 1925, Mary visited Lucia again, and this time she explained the specific requirements for the communion of reparation on the first 5 Saturdays. Those requirements are reconciliation, Holy Mass with the reception of the Eucharist, pray the Rosary, and spend time in adoration. In 1929, a final visit from Mary occurred with Lucia, and this time, Mary appeared with the Holy Trinity, again asking for the consecration of Russia. Now, when I read that she appeared with the Holy Trinity, I'm like, how does the Holy Trinity appear? This is a rendition. You can buy this print. You will see Sister Lucia in the foreground. You will see Mary with her Immaculate Heart, and she's holding a rosary. You see Christ crucified on the cross, and above him is our Father God, and there is a dove there representing the Holy Spirit. This is also known as the Holy Trinity Crucifix. On this side, you will see in Latin, the words that say grace and mercy. You will also see in this picture a chalice just under the area where Jesus was lanced. And you will see a host above that chalice, and you will see Jesus bleeding into that chalice. Now, in some talks that Deacon Gary has given, he has asked the question, how do we tie what's happening on the altar in the consecration with what we see on the crucifix? And this does it for me. This helps me pull those two together. And you can buy this print. Just look online. On May 13th, 1981, Pope St. John Paul II was shot. And he went and he read the secret, and he disclosed it to everyone. And that secret said that a bishop in white would be shot. And we know that his life was spared. And he said that while the bullet was going one direction, a hand moved in another direction. Why was his life spared? What was God's plan? Think about those questions. We'll talk about them later. Lucia went on to become a Carmelite nun. She died on February 13th, 2005, at the age of 97. On June 22nd, 2017, she was declared venerable. We are still waiting for her beatification and canonization. So, what is an apparition? Well, according to general definition, Webster's Dictionary, it's the act of appearing. It's a ghost, or a ghost-like image of a person. So let's talk about ghosts for a minute. Are they real? In the Bible, there's a couple of different references about ghosts in the Old Testament and the New Testament. I want to concentrate on one in the New Testament. It's in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, verses 36 through 39. It is when after Jesus has risen from the dead, and it's after he had appeared to the two disciples on the road to Emmaus, and they went back to the apostles in the upper room to tell them what had happened. So this is the point in time where we're at. This passage reads, while they were still speaking about this, the apostles, he, being Jesus, stood in their midst and said to them, peace be with you. But they were startled and terrified and thought they were seeing a ghost. And then he said to them, why are you troubled? And why do questions arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet, that it is I, myself. Touch me and see, because a ghost does not have flesh and bones as you can see I have. And as he said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. And while they were still incredulous for joy and were amazed, he asked them, have you anything here to eat? They gave him a piece of baked fish. He took it and ate it in front of them. Now, if you notice in this passage, Jesus didn't look at the apostles and say, you silly boys, there's no such thing as ghosts. He didn't deny the existence of ghosts either. There are some articles on the internet about this passage. If you go and research it, I advise you to make sure you read articles from trusted sources. But it's an interesting concept to mull over. The rest of the dictionary definitions of an apparition are, it's a phenomenon. It's a supernatural appearance of a person or a thing. It's a manifestation. So let's take all these definitions and we're going to sprinkle it with Catholic doctrine and ask, what is a Marian apparition? It's a supernatural appearance of Mary. It must be seen in an individual's own environment. And if Mary is only heard and not seen, it's called an interior locution. It is not an apparition. Mary takes on the traits of the people of that culture from that place or time. Why? Why does she do this? So as not to scare or intimidate the visionaries, but to bring peace and calm to them, and that they would welcome her with her message. She wants to be part of them. For an example, she looked very different at Lourdes than she did at Guadalupe. How are apparitions approved? It's a very long process, so I'm not going to go into the details, but I will tell you that the process was just updated in April of this year. The last update was in 1978. Typically, an apparition has to be approved by the local bishop of the area or diocese, and then it can be referred to the Vatican for further investigation. The Vatican or the Pope may approve an apparition, and it doesn't elevate the apparition to any higher status, it just is an added bonus. In the approval process, there are 3 decisions. 1 is, yes, it's approved. 2 is, no, we've rejected it, it's a negative decision. And 3, it's not been given a decision at all. The number of approved apparitions. Currently, over 2,000 years, 26. 16 of them are Vatican approved, and the remaining 10 are bishop approved. In the 20th century, before we go to the 20th century, these are the 16 Vatican approved apparitions. No, we're not there yet. Next slide. No, let's go to the next slide. One more. These are the 10 bishop-approved apparitions. And if you've read through the list, you will notice there's only 1 apparition approved in the United States. And that is Our Lady of Champion, Wisconsin. Briefly, this occurred with a young lady by the name of Adele Bryce. And Adele had seen our Blessed Mother in the woods a few times. And then on one of those visits, she had a discussion with our Blessed Mother, who asked for Adele to teach children the Catechism of the Catholic Church and to especially teach them the sign of the cross. Adele did this at great length for the rest of her life. A chapel was built at the site of this apparition and later a small church on 5 acres. Some years later, there was a great wildfire, one of the largest in history, that occurred. And it appeared that this wildfire was going to swallow up this church and the 5 acres of land that it was on. It killed over 2,500 people. Those that were surviving, some of them went to the church and prayed. There was livestock that was brought to the church grounds. And through their prayers to the Blessed Mother, the skies opened up and the rain came down and it put the fire out. The chapel and the grounds that it was on were not touched. The fence that surrounded the 5 acres were barely charred by the fire. Everything else around it was burnt to the ground. Every year, is it August 13th, Jane?
15.
August 15th, there is a celebration of this miracle there in Champion, Wisconsin. Let's go to the next slide. In the 20th century, there are 386 reported apparitions. 8 of those are approved, 79 have been rejected, and the remaining 299 have not been given a decision. The 8 approved cases are Our Lady of Fatima, Our Lady of the Golden Heart in Bahrain, Belgium, Virgin of the Poor in Banot, Belgium, the Silent Lady or Our Lady of Light in Zeytin, Egypt, Mother of the Word in Kibeho, Rwanda, Reconciler of People and Nations in Betania, Venezuela, Our Lady of Copa in Copa, Nicaragua, and Our Lady of the Rosary of San Nicolas in San Nicolas, Argentina. Now you will notice that not on this list, and different lists vary, is Our Lady of Akita, because that is a different type of apparition where Mary spoke from a statue. Also not on this list is Our Lady of Edsa in Manila, Philippines, This occurred in 1986 during the Marcos reign. And at that time, the government was so out of control and only for themselves, and the people were unhappy, and they were going to stage a protest. And so the Marcoses got word of that, and so they employed the army and all the soldiers of the army. In Manila, the people were very devoted to our Blessed Mother, including the soldiers in the army. When that protest occurred, it promised to be a very bloody battle. The soldiers were ready to fire on the people, and they never fired one shot because the soldiers said, "We saw our Blessed Mother. How could we fire on our own people?" Not long after that, the Marcoses were thrown out of power, and the rest was history. So, let's take about a 2-minute break, stand up, stretch, get reacquainted with our bottom sides because these chairs get a little hard. And then we'll come back and we'll go over some lesser known apparitions.
See you get paid. We're going to see you get on that Watch the camera. We're on camera.
Not anymore.
What's going on there, buddy?
Thank you.
See you too.
Wait for the door.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I'm great.
Hi, sweetheart.
Okay.
He was right here. Boy, lucky I did. I didn't smell it. I didn't think of it. A little more coffee, yeah. That might be a good sign.
I'm really happy I brought this. So happy. No, my dish. Thank you.
We're at the experimental afternoon. Bottom level.
30-second warning.
I haven't seen you for a while. I know. I've seen you around. You've been busy all the time. Nice to see you. You too. Thank you so much. Yeah, not the whole time. I've got it. Morning. Good morning.
I saw this. More than others.
Yeah, well, yes. No kidding.
Okay, can we come back to our seats? continue.
I gotta go.
Okay, can we get back to our seats and continue, please?
Very, very.
Okay, we're about ready to start up again.
I'd like to get into Sunday
Need the producer?
I'm a pillar.
Need the producer?
No, I'm just a pillar. I'm just supposed to sit in the way so people don't bump this.
All right.
Okay, so let's move on to some apparitions that are lesser known. And I would like to start with Our Lady of Hope in Pugmain, France from 1871.
After people are gone from
It occurred with 4 children by the names of Eugene and Joseph Barbadette, who were 12 and 10 years old, Francois Richet, and Jean-Marie Labosse. At the time that this apparition happened, the Prussians were marching to attack a nearby town called Lavelle. They were trying to take over all of France, so they were marching to take over this town of Lavelle. And if Lavelle fell, Pugmain would be easily captured. So the 2 Barbadette boys had an older brother who would have been involved in this battle because he was in the army. One night, the 2 boys were working with their father out in the barn, and they took a break and they went out to the door, and almost immediately they saw Our Blessed Mother above the roof of the neighbor's house. She appeared wearing dark blue dress with long flowing sleeves, a band of gold around the collar, a black veil on top her head with a gold cap that looked like a crown. This signifies that she's a queen. She had on blue slippers with gold ribbons. And I'm not sure which child put forth this next description, but I found it kind of funny. They said that her teeth were pearl white and sparkled when she smiled. Okay. The apparition lasted for about 3 hours. People were told about the apparition. What had happened is the boys went back into work. They told their father about what was going on. He didn't believe them, told them to quit playing games, get back to work. So they finished up work. They went in and they had dinner, and they rushed through their dinner because they wanted to see the apparition some more. So when they went back outside, sure enough, there was Mary above the rooftop. Different people around the town had heard about it, approximately 60, and they sent for the nearby nun to come. They didn't tell her why, and she brought 2 of the children with her, and that would have been Francois and Jean-Marie. When the 2 girls arrived, they had no idea why they were being brought, and when the 2 girls arrived, they immediately fell to their knees, shouting out, "Do you see her? She's there above the roof." So they could see Mary as well. One of the people wanted to know what the 3 stars were. And one of the girls said, well, at the top star, because they were in the shape of a triangle, at the top star is Mary's head. And the bottom 2 stars are where Mary's shoulders are. After hearing this, the people, having great faith, dropped to their knees, believing, and they were saying prayers. They said the rosary. They sang hymns and other prayers. They sang the Magnificat. They sang the Ave Maria. While this was going on, a banner appeared and it unfurled itself. And there was a message on that banner which said, "But pray, my children." And then a little while later, a new message appeared on that banner, and it said, God will hear you in a little while, or a different translation is, God will soon answer your prayers. There was a final message on that banner, and it said, my son permits himself to be moved, or my son permits himself to be touched. Another translation says, my son is willing to hear you. The vision ended, and the crowd was severely disappointed, but it didn't last long, because then they became overjoyed. They received word that during the time of the apparition, the Prussian general announced to his troops, we can go no further. An invisible Madonna is barring the way. The general and all his troops retreated and never did attack Lavelle. And 12 days later, an armistice for peace was signed. This apparition teaches us, through Jesus' mother, we can change his mind. Chastisements can be lessened, minimized, or even done away with through the intercession of Mary. And as those of you who are consecrated, you know, to Jesus through Mary. At the end of the vision, a large white veil appeared at Our Lady's feet, and it started to ascend, covering Mary, but it stopped at the neck region. She looked down at her children with love, and the veil covered her face. My son allows himself to be touched. Jesus will change his mind if we change our way. Jesus' love is unconditional, but intervention on our behalf is not. An action on our part is required if we ask for intervention. What kind of action? Attending daily Mass if we never did. Attending Mass at all if we haven't been in a few years. Saying the Rosary every day. Sitting in adoration. Helping the poor. Those are different actions that we can do. If we're willing to make the effort, Jesus will take the action. So what happened to the 4 children? Joseph and Eugene Barbadette went on to become priests. Francois Richet became an assistant teacher, and then she became a housekeeper for Eugene Barbadette. Jean-Marie Lavosse joined the Sisters of the Holy Family in Bordeaux. The apparition, remember, it happened in 1871. It was authenticated by the local bishop on February 2nd, 1872. That is lightning speed for the Catholic Church. Let's move on to Our Lady of Las Lajas. This is one of my favorites. It occurred in Las Lajas, Colombia, in the Gotera Canyon in 1754. It occurred to a woman named Maria de Quinones and her daughter, Rosa. Rosa was deaf and mute from birth. And one day, while Maria and Rosa were traveling from one village to another, they came to the area of Las Lajas, which means the rock, and the trail passed through a deep gorge of the Gotera River. So while they were traveling here, a storm came up, a rather strong storm. So Maria prayed to our Blessed Mother in hopes of finding shelter. And indeed, they found a cave, and they entered. Maria felt something touch her on her shoulder, and she immediately grabbed her daughter and fled the cave and raced home. A few days later, they were traveling the same route, and Maria decided to rest on a stone near the cave. I have to assume that it was quite a hot day, and she needed to rest a moment. While she was there resting, her daughter suddenly said, "Mommy, look at the lady with the boy in her lap." Her daughter spoke. She'd never spoken before in her life. So again, Maria raced home with her daughter, and she told all the villagers about what happened, and they believed. One day, Rosa was missing, and Maria looked all over for her. Maria knew of Rosa's infatuation with the cave, so she went to the cave, and sure enough, she found her daughter. And she saw her daughter there playing with the child, and occasionally she was kneeling before a beautiful lady. Well, suddenly Maria, it dawned on her, oh my gosh, this is Mary, our Blessed Mother. And so Maria dropped to her knees in admiration and reverence. Several weeks later, Rosa takes ill and she dies. Maria is very distraught, like any mother would be, and she grabs the dead, lifeless body of her daughter and she goes to the cave. And the townspeople follow her because they knew the daughter had died. While in the cave, Maria dropped to her knees and she prayed to our Blessed Mother, asking for Rosa's life to be restored. And sure enough, Rosa did come back to life. One of the villagers was there at the opening of the cave, and he noticed on the rock an image. This is the image of Our Lady of Las Lajas. Notice in the image St. Dominic and St. Francis. If you look closer, you will see that Mary is handing a rosary to St. Dominic and a Franciscan cord to St. Francis. There's been a church and a shrine built at that area. This is the church built over the gorge. A little Gothic, but very beautiful. And inside the church, behind the altar, is the rock. They built the church around the rock. There were no messages or requests that came from our Blessed Mother, but many miracles have been reported to have happened there. There have been a lot of examination of the image on the rock. Just like Guadalupe, there are no brushstrokes. The medium used to create this image is unknown to man. They have drilled 3 feet deep into the rock, and the color goes 3 feet deep. There has been no fading on the image. As you can see how brilliant it is. It's as brilliant today as when it was first seen. I want to show you one more thing. Our Lady of Las Lajas, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Now, I don't know if any of you see it, but I saw it. Great similarities. There are stars and gold around the edge of the mantle. The gown is rose-colored. If you look at the hands, they look almost identical. Don't worry about the crowns. That's some priest putting his bedazzlement on it. If you look at the face, obviously the eyes are open in the Colombia picture and they're downcast in the Mexico picture. But if you look at the shape of the face and how similar it is, if you look at the hairline and where the part in the hair is and the little scoop there, they are similar. The nose and the mouth look almost identical. These are the only 2 images known left behind by our Blessed Mother. These 2 images are of how she would look as a Latin American woman. It's mind-blowing. Moving on to another apparition, we are going to go to the Silent Lady, or Our Lady of Light, in Zeetan, Egypt. Zeetan, Egypt is just outside of Cairo, and it is along the route that Mary and Joseph took when they fled to Egypt. And on that route are other villages, and occasionally there's been a chapel that's been built. And where those chapels are, it is said that those are the areas where Mary and Joseph stopped to rest and pray. So there was a chapel built in Zeetan, Egypt, and now it's a church, and it is known as St. Mary's Coptic Church. Coptic Church because it's Catholic, but it's Egyptian Catholic. They have a different pope, and their doctrine is slightly different than the Roman Catholic Church. On April 2nd, 1968, the very first appearance of Mary occurred. These are actual photos. She was seen walking around the rooftop of the church, and every time she came to the area where there was a cross, which would have been on one of the domes, she would either bow or kneel in reverence. These apparitions were photographed, filmed, televised, and written about in the secular and religious press. These apparitions happened night after night, and they were seen by a great many people of different nationalities and different religions. Catholics, Protestants, Muslims, Jewish people, atheists. Eyewitnesses were interviewed, and they all gave the same, almost identical description of what they had seen and experienced. There was no deviation from them. These apparitions, as I mentioned, happened night after night. There was no speaking or messages that appeared. It was just movement. There was a Muslim man early on in the apparitions that had just finished the treatment for his leg. He had severe gangrene. He stopped and he watched this apparition. The next day he had to go for another treatment. He was halfway through. They didn't know if they'd be able to get it all cleared up or not. When he arrived at the doctor's, they unwrapped the bandages on his leg. There was no wound. It was completely healed, and he converted from Muslim to Catholicism. This apparition was first approved by Pope Kyrillus VI of the Coptic Church. While these apparitions were happening, the Vatican was contacted and they asked for a team of investigators to come, which they did. On April 28th, the investigators saw the apparition for themselves. They started investigating. They could not find any kind of projectors or anything. They went to the city and they asked the city to turn off the electricity the next night, which the city agreed to do. So there was no power, no light, no nothing. And yet the apparition happened again, and everybody saw our Blessed Mother walking around the rooftop of the church. They could not find any kind of technologically advanced devices. First time I read about this and saw it, I was in my house by myself, nobody heard me, but there was a gasp. And my heart dropped. And I thought, oh my gosh, of all apparitions, for some reason, this one struck me because it was real. This is the Coptic church during the daytime. You notice the domes with the crosses. This is an actual photo of our Blessed Mother. You can see the halo around her head. She is standing with her hands outstretched. When she appeared, there were dove-like images also, and they came to form a cross. So, let's conclude this. Mary's our protective mother. There's a lot more research I have to do about apparitions, but it's just mind-blowing when you read about it. Mary comes to us whenever things are about to take an ugly turn, or when atrocities toward her Son Jesus, God our Father, or humankind have gone way too far. She comes to protect us, her children, from Satan, whether it's war, pagan practices, sins against God. She's our mother, constantly at work for our welfare. Now, we don't have to have an apparition to have faith, right? Blessed are those who have not seen but believe. Mary's message is always pray, 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 and pray some more. Mary was a gift to us from Jesus, and in turn, she has given us a great many gifts. She's given us the rosary to St. Dominic, the scapular to St. Simon Stock, the miraculous medal to St. Catherine Labouré, the Seven Sorrows Rosary to St. Bridget of Sweden, and then it was revived again with Marie Claire Mukangango in Kiboho, Rwanda. She's given us healing waters, such places like Lourdes or Gershwald, Poland. Chapels, churches, shrines, and basilicas have been built at the site of the apparitions, all because she calls others to build them. There's the possibility of one more gift from Mary, and that is the Stations of the Cross. I mentioned it's a possibility. In the book Queen of Heaven, which I have here on display, The author cites Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, who had visions of Mary and spoke with Mary and learned about Mary's life. The author cites her and says that when John brought Mary to the house in Ephesus, she would walk the hillside where she laid out a path for stations, the distance of which corresponded to Christ's ascent to Calvary. When the house in Ephesus was found in the 19th century, in the 1800s, there were gatherings of rocks found in circles, spaced out evenly in a pattern behind the home. They had Jewish engravings on them, and when translated, it was found to be markers for the Stations of the Cross. Now, unfortunately, some of this information cannot be verified. We don't know who put those rocks there. Could it be Mary? Could it be Mary and St. John? Could it be John? Could it be somebody else? I've mentioned it's a possibility. It is not something that's been totally verified. I'll let you decide for yourself. The importance of Mary in the Catholic Church will be seen on this list. There are 18 dates in the liturgical calendar. 5 of those 18 dates are solemnities, holy days of obligation. All these dates are the feast days that we celebrate about Mary. Nobody else in heaven has that many, except for maybe Jesus. And the next person who might come close would be St. John the Baptist, who has 2. May and October are the months of Mary. This is how much she is revered in the Catholic Church. That's how much she does for us. To Jesus through Mary. There's a bonus apparition. It was just approved July 5th of this year by the Vatican, called the Mystical Rose. It occurred in Montechiari in Fontenelle, Italy in 1947 with a young lady by the name of, and I'm going to butcher her name, Purini Gili. The first apparition with Purini is when she was in the hospital chapel praying, and Mary appeared to her wearing a violet dress and a white veil, and Mary had an expression of sorrow on her face and tears in her eyes. She showed Purini her Immaculate Heart with 3 swords piercing it. Our Lady asked for prayer, penance, and sacrifice. On July 13th, 1947, there was a second apparition with Mary and Purini. She was dressed in white. There were no swords in her Immaculate Heart, but instead there were 3 roses, white, red, and yellow. And these symbolize the spirits of prayer, sacrifice, and penance. Mary was sent to bring a new Marian devotion to all religious orders and institutes, and to all priests of the world. Mary asked that every year on July 13th, that day would be held in honor of the Mystical Rose. In another vision, Mary came back with yet another wish, and that was every year on December 8th, which we know to be what? The Immaculate Conception. That at noon, an hour of grace would be held worldwide and celebrated. So let's think about that for a moment. Start at the international date line at noon, and you go through all the different time zones around the world. It results in 24 hours of grace for the world to be celebrated. Pretty awesome stuff. So, now what? What are you going to do with all this information? Many of you have been consecrated to the Blessed Mother. Will this help you to further your commitment to your consecration? Is it going to inspire you to go online and learn about some Marian apparitions? I want to tell you about 2 old movies, and they're really old. And you've probably seen them. But those of you who've been consecrated to the Blessed Mother, I advise you go back and watch them again because you're going to see them in a different light. The first movie is from 1943, and I will tell you, Hollywood did a fabulous job with both these movies for as old as they are. The first one's from 1943. It's about Lourdes. It's called The Song of Bernadette. Watch it again. Tell me if you don't see it in a different light. The second movie is from 1952, and it's The Miracle of Our Lady of Fatima. One of the things they concentrate on in that movie is the treatment of the children. Watch it again, and tell me if you don't see why heaven was angry. So at this time in our presentation, typically I'll say, are there any questions? I'm not going to say that this time. I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to ask you questions, and hopefully we can have a discussion. So I'm going to throw some questions out there. First of all, why was Pope St. John Paul's life spared? What do you think God's plan was? Secondly, let's hear your opinion about the two photos of the Latin American Marys side by side. And then let's hear your opinions about some of these other apparitions and why Mary comes to us. We'll open it up. We'll take microphones around to you. Just raise your hand and somebody will be there with a microphone. Anybody? Don't be shy. Oh, we got one. Tell us your name too.
Marcia O'Connor and John Paul. I'm Polish, so I have a really strong feeling about this. He had such a profound effect on the youth of the world when he was Pope. I had the privilege of going to World Youth Day in Denver when he was there 30 years ago. There were 500,000 kids during this week. A lot of those kids ended up being priests, religious, got married, started families. He had a profound effect on the youth. I think that's why she saved him. We need that effect on our youth again.
Yes, we do.
Big time.
Yep, we do. Anybody else? Okay, way across the room.
I am so glad that she brought that up. The Pope was in Chicago. I was a single parent with 3 little boys, and we went downtown Chicago, and initially we were waiting on the street where the cars were going to come by, and one of the police officers grabbed my youngest son, Adam. He was 7 years old. And as the car went by with the Pope in it, Adam touched the car. We stayed through, of course, the Mass and all of that. My kids were so stunned by the crowd and the impact that man had on us. We stayed long enough that they were taking everything apart, and to this day I carry one of the nails from the altar that they built in the middle of the park. My belief for the Pope and for all of us is that God knew we still needed him. There was a job for him to finish, and it's for all of us to keep that going. What the Pope gave all of us and our children's generation is just profound. It's just profound.
The devotion that the Pope had to the Blessed Mother is very difficult to match, but we can certainly work to do that. And it was the Blessed Mother who guided him.
I was going to say that his motto was total to us, totally yours.
And that's what consecration to the Blessed Mother is all about, totally yours. All right, we have a few more comments on this side of the room.
I'm Victor Laporte. I just wanted to clarify a few things about Our Lady of Guadalupe. The word Guadalupe is Arabic. The word Fatima is Arabic. I was profoundly moved when I heard about the Muslim from Zaytun who converted. That's a very dangerous thing to do if you're a member of Islam, because it carries a death sentence with it. Very brave man. The form that Our Lady of Guadalupe took in 1531 was, and this was 20 years after the invasion of the Spanish, was of a mixed blood, a mestizo. And these children were of mixed Indian and Spanish heritage, and they were not accepted by the natives, and they were not accepted by the Spaniards. And she humbled herself and showed herself in this form of the outcasts. And it was a great message for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Peggy, did you have something?
Being part of the 33 Days programs, I can't help but talk about the fact that Pope John Paul II was so instrumental in divine mercy and perpetuating it throughout the world, and getting the correct translation into the Vatican, because it had been banned because of the translation being so poor, because she was illiterate when she wrote all this down. And so he was the Pope who at that time had been the bishop and made sure that the translations were correct and brought back to the Vatican. And he also said that divine mercy was his mission as Pope. And when he declared that it had been accomplished with Divine Mercy Sunday and all, he was saying, you know, my mission is accomplished. So.
Anybody else? Oh, we got one.
My name is Ed. It's in regards to the two Latin American apparitions. I'm not familiar with the one in Las Lajas, but I was at in the confessional line and waiting to go into confession, and they had a picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe there. And as I was gazing at it, I says, well, Mary didn't draw this, and Maeder didn't draw this. I says, was this drawn by the hand of God? And I was looking at it during the confession, and I says, did I really do that? Did I really do that? I said, by the time I got into the confession, I says, I think I already made my confession to Mary. Because he still doubted me. But it just struck me that I think the hand of God put that image on that tilma, just like I didn't know about the house, but apparently God also put that image on that stone. So that was very profound.
My name is Russ, and I just want to say an observation here that what we're doing right now is the so what, the now what. And that is, we're gathering together just mysteriously. How did we get together? God is doing this to all of us, for all of us, reuniting us to Him and proclaiming His glory. We don't know exactly what's happening, but we're here proclaiming joyfully, brothers and sisters in God. Truly, the way He created us, coming together. We're doing it. We don't have... It's just, think about it. We're doing it right now, just being together. We are answering the call. It's just, it's thrilling. Let it go. Let it fly. Feel it. Enjoy it. Thank Him. Amen.
Okay, I see a hand over here.
My name is Brett Maeder, and John Paul gave us the luminous mysteries, rosary. He saw that that was something like Christ that was missing from the rosary, so we say it every Thursday.
Anybody else have anything, any comment, question? Jane?
Jane Wicker. This just came to me. We talk about to Jesus through Mary. Well, we have been very blessed at this parish that we have our own special Mary who is teaching us so much. Jesus.
On the note of to Jesus through Mary, one thing I want to explain is Mary's the Queen Mother. She's the mother of Jesus. In Jewish tradition, the king has his advisors, and we know Jesus is the king. He's the Lord of Lords, King of Kings. He's the prime king, right? And that makes Mary the Queen Mother. So in Jewish tradition, the closest advisor to the king is the Queen Mother. She has his ear. That is why we go to Mary first, and she perfects our prayers and takes them to her Son. This is what you learn in the 33 Days to Consecration retreat. If you've not been in that retreat, I highly advise that you sign up and attend. It will change your heart and your life. Anybody else have any questions or anything?
Sign up right here.
The only other thing I want to tell you is in October we will be celebrating St. Francis, who is the patron saint of our parish. And on October 7th, there will be a Mass. There will be a Rosary after Mass. And yours truly will be doing a talk on the Rosary and the Battle of Lepanto. Okay? Is there like breakfast with that?
There is a breakfast.
Food, come. Any other comments, anything to say, questions or anything? Okay, thank you all for attending. I appreciate it.